Hi, so today we're going to be talking about percents and fractions. Ignore the double click to edit and the other slideshow behind the scenes stuff you might see during this presentation because it won't let me play the slideshow and record at the same time. So we got to start with what is the definition of percent. If we break down that word percent, we can see that it really means per hundred. It makes sense if you think about it, because think about other words that you know that have cents in them. Like 1 cent, in terms of money, there's 100 cents in a dollar. So that's further evidence that cent means 100. Also, century is 100 years, and the centimeter is 100th of a meter, and there's probably other examples that you could think of as well. If you look at the percent symbol, you can see that it's really made up of a 1, that's this diagonal part, and 2 zeros. So percent really does have this connection with 100, and that's how they created the symbol. The definition of a percent is a ratio whose denominator is 100. Please write down this definition in your notebook because that's the definition that I would be asking you to recall later. You can pause the video if you need time to write that down. We're definitely going to be using this definition later in the lesson, so make sure you remember it. A ratio whose denominator is 100. If we move on, here are just some representations of percent. If we have 100 pieces of pizza, we could break them up into sections of 25 pieces of pizza. If we have one of these sections, it's 25 pieces of the original 100 pieces, and that's 25% of the pizza. You could also see that it's 1/4 of the entire pizza, which is why 1/4 is the same thing as 25%. We're going to be going through how to go back and forth between those forms today. Here's another representation of percents. This isn't something that you would need to copy down in your notes, so just look at it. If you look, we see that this is a chart called Daniel's Day, and it's breaking up the activities that he does throughout his day into percentages. He spends 34% of his time at school, he spends 4% of his time eating, 6% of his time doing homework, etc. If we add up these percents, they should equal 100, because we're wondering how much he spends in his day per 100. Here's just a comparison of the different ways to represent the exact same number. Again, this is the type of thing that we're going to be learning today. So it's okay if you don't fully understand it to begin with. These all mean 25%. 1/4 of a circle, think back to the pizza example, 1/4 as a fraction, 25%, and then the decimal 25 hundredths. That makes sense, right? Per 100, 25 hundredths. So we're going to be going over this type of stuff over the next couple days. So here's our first problem, and this is going to kind of get us to how to go between percents and fractions. Let's think of this. You have 20 classmates, and out of those 20, 13 are girls. Write this as a ratio. So we're going to start by following the instructions and writing this as a ratio. Let's see, so 13 are girls. I'm going to write 13 out of 20. Remember, this is called a part to whole ratio. Part of the class is the 13 girls. The whole is 20. So we're just going to remember that for the next slide because it's not going to let me keep it, so I'll rewrite it. So we had that 13 out of 20. Now the question is, how many girls would there be if there were 100 students? There's two ways you can solve this. You can set it up as 13 over 20 equals x over 100 and solve for x. In this case, though, since 20 goes into 100 evenly, we can just say 20 times 5 equals 100. So therefore, we also need 13 times 5. So 13 times 5, I'm going to reason that out in my head, and I think that's going to be 65. So if there were 100 students in the class, 65 of them would be girls. This leads us to the conclusion that we're going to draw in the next slide. All right, so on the previous slide, we had 13 out of 20, and then we figured out that that meant 65 out of 100. Therefore, what percent of the class is girls? Well, the definition of percent is how many out of 100? 65 out of 100. So 65% of the class is girls, and that would be the answer to that problem. So now I have the same type of problem, except instead of breaking it into 3 slides, I've given you all 3 questions at once. So let's look at the first question first. Your sister bakes 5 cookies and gives you 3. Write this as a ratio. I'm going to give you a second to do that. Okay, so hopefully there you would have gotten 3/5. How many would she have given you out of 100? Please pause the video now and figure that out. So there are 2 ways to do this. One of them you could have set up 3 over 5 equals x over 100 and cross multiplied. Or you could have said I have 3/5. 5 times 20 equals 100. So I need 3 times 20, and that's 60. So the answer to the second question is 60 out of 100. What percent of the cookies do you get? Pause the video and think of this. Hopefully you said 60%. Out of 100 cookies, you got 60. 60 per 100. 60%. All right, moving on. You turn in 10 homework assignments. Out of these 10, 7 of them were turned in on time. How many would you have turned in on time out of 100? So here you can see that we're kind of getting to the question right away now. So now I'm not asking you to write it as a ratio. I'm telling you right away go to 100. So pause the video, figure out how many of the assignments you would have turned in on time out of 100. Okay, so hopefully you set it up as 7 over 10, and then you either did equals x over 100 and solved like that, or 7 out of 10 times 10 times 10, 70 out of 100. What percent of these assignments were on time? Pause the video and figure that out. Hopefully you got 70%. All right, so now we're kind of skipping that whole middle step of figure it out as over 100 first, and I'm just giving you the problem straightforward. So I'd like you to convert 13/20ths to a percent. Pause the video and figure that out. Okay, so hopefully you did 13 over 20. I don't want to do the equals. You could have done it as a proportion, that's fine. I want the times 5 times 5, and I get 65 out of 100, which is 65%. That's my answer for that one. I'm just going to skip forward till we can see all 4 of the problems. Alright, so on this first one we had 65%. Please pause the video now and figure out the answers to the next 3. Alright, hopefully you've done that. So 3/10, I'm going to change that times 10 times 10 to 30 over 100. That gets me 30%. 1/4 times 25 times 25 becomes 25 out of 100, 25%. 2/5 times 20 times 20, 40 out of 100, 40%. Hopefully you were able to get those answers. All right, so now we're going to practice using proportions. And I think I'll show you this one by itself, and then I'll put up the screen so you can see all the problems again. So this is kind of what I've hinted to before. If we were to try to set it up as 14 over 71 and figure out, okay, what can I multiply it by to get over 100, we wouldn't really be able to come up with a number very easily. I don't know in my head what 71 times something is 100, so I need to use proportions on this. So I want to set it up as 14 over 71 equals x over 100. And now I'm going to do my regular cross multiplication. So that ends up being 14 times 100 equals 71x. 1400 equals 71x. Divide both sides by 71. And I get x equals, I can't do this in my head, so I'm pulling out my calculator. I get x equals 19.72%. We want to round it to the hundredths place. 19.72%. And I don't need to convert it at the end. That's just my final answer. So 19.72. Now I'm going to pull up the other problems. All right. This first one was 19.72%. Please pause the video and try the next 3 problems. Alright, hopefully you've paused the video and you've tried these out. For part B, you would set it up as 19 out of 85 equals x over 100. You do your cross multiplication. You end up with 19 times 100 equals 85x. 1900 equals 85x. Divide both sides by 85. And let's see, 1900 divided by 85 on my calculator, I get x equals 22.35%. 22.35. So I'm going to erase all this junk so I can do the next problem. 22.35%. Setting up the other ones, I'm just going to do them on my calculator and write down the answers since I've already shown you the setup and I don't want to make the video that long. So 72 over 57 equals x over 100. Cross multiply, solve for x. I get that this one is 126.32%. Now why is it a percent over 100%? That's because we had 72 out of 57. Out of 57 total, 72 of them satisfied whatever our criteria was. I have 72 somethings out of 57 somethings. 72 is bigger than 57, so that's why my answer was over 100%. This next one should be over 100% too. Oops, my stuff just disappeared. Sorry about that. This next one should be over 100 as well because 95 is bigger than 91. So for this one, I want to set it up as 95 divided by 91 equals x over 100. When I do that, I get as my answer 104 points. Let's see, it looks like it's going to round to 40%. Again, it's over 100 because 95 is bigger than 91. All right, hopefully you did okay on those. So here's kind of a more challenging question. And it says you are missing 5% of the homework assignments. Write this as a ratio compared to 100. So I'm actually going to pause the video here because it looks like I'm running out of time on this video. So I'm going to pause this one and upload it, and then we'll pick this up on my next video.